Alright, David Patrick, this one's for you if you ever watch or listen to any of my videos. And if you do, I'm going to take it as a great compliment because I really like the stuff you produce. Anybody who doesn't know what I'm talking about, you should go check out Valuetainment. That man, he knows what's up. Alright, I got questioned on this the other day, so I had to make a video. This is one of those times where it may not be news for me, but it probably is news for you. Check this out. Capital. The way they spell it, for instance, like Capital, Washington, D.C., or your state capital, it's spelled C-A-P-I-T-O-L and not A-L. Now, when you spell it with an O-L, check this out. Here's what the definition is from Webster's 1828. The Temple of Jupiter in Rome. The Temple of Jupiter in Rome. The second definition is the edifice occupied by the Congress of the United States. Now, of course, we all know that an edifice is a place to be worshipped. Now, this doesn't in and of itself prove that the government is a thing to be worshipped or is supposed to be worshipped or is meant to be worshipped. So let's move on to our next topic. Let's go to the Capitol Dome. So this is the dome inside of the Capitol building at Washington, D.C. Let's check this out. Now, as you can see, this dome was modeled after the Pantheon. In fact, it has the same floor plan and space as the Pantheon over in Rome. Now, if you don't know, the Pantheon is where they housed all of the gods until they believed in Christianity, and then they turned it into a church. So for right now, Pantheon is where all of the gods are housed. Now, inside of this Pantheon, which we call the Capitol building, which is the seat or temple of Jupiter, they have what is called the Apotheosis of Washington. The Apotheosis of George Washington. Now, this comes from the government's own website. Check it out. George Washington, who represents Jupiter, because remember, it's a temple of Jupiter, the capital. He is surrounded by 6 Roman gods. The god of war, which is armed freedom. Freedom is liberty, or Columbia. Okay, this is why it's the District of Columbia, because Columbia is the goddess that they recognized when they made this Capitol building. Columbia is libertas, or freedom. Armed freedom, not just freedom, armed freedom, and we'll get to that because that's why it's the god of war, represents war, and of course we know that the god Mars is the god of war for the Romans. Next we go to science, okay? So science, Minerva. Minerva is the god of science for the Romans. Then we go to the marine. We go to the god of the marine, and that is Neptune and Venus. Okay, Venus represents Tuesday, also represents love. Came from the sea, and this is why they're marine gods. After that, we go to the god of commerce. The god of commerce would be Mercury. Okay, so Mercury would be the god of commerce. Now, in ancient Greek times, Mercury would have been depicted as Hermes. But not today, not anymore. Now we have Mercury. And of course, Mercury is represented by the day of the week, Wednesday. So remember, not only are these gods, but they also represent the days of the week. After commerce, we get to the god Vulcan. Okay? So because Star Trek is very, very governmental, right? Because you have Vulcans, you have Romulus, you know, it's all about Roman mythology. It's all about the Romans, the government, how good government and confederations work. I love Star Trek, but it's got some crazy symbolism working on in there. Now, Vulcan is the god of mechanics, fire, forging, production, creativity, the god that helps war, because we all know that mechanized warfare helps make war more effective. Now let's keep going. The last god you have, but definitely not the least, is agriculture, represented by the god Ceres. Okay? Now Ceres is the daughter of Saturn, represents agriculture. This could also represent the moon, because for a long time planting was done by lunar cycles. In almanacs, farmers' almanacs today, it's still done by lunar cycles. So you have war, science, marine, commerce, mechanics, and agriculture. Now, the government never in history has had control of all of these sectors of society. For the most part, the government has had control of war. Government's always had control of war because the government's the ones who have taken us to war. They've always had control of marine because that's how big commerce flows all around the world, is marine. So they've always had control of some commerce as well. Mechanics, they've had control of mechanics as far as it does with warfare. Okay, but most mechanics until the early 20th century were invented privately. So the people had control of those. Now, commerce. They've always had their hands in commerce, especially big commerce, big corporate commerce. But as far as like the small individual, the farmer at the farmer's market, no, they haven't had their hands in that until the past 50 years. Again, going into agriculture, because we were just talking about the farmer's market. The government has recently purchased their hand in the agricultural business. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. If the government doesn't subsidize the farmers don't get paid, they don't grow food, we can't eat. We're going to run into big supply chain problems because of the pandemic and the supply chains of a few farmers ultimately growing most of what we eat. Alright, you're still not convinced. You still don't think that George Washington represents Jupiter at the Apotheosis of Washington. Or the Capitol Dome. Whatever. Here's the Smithsonian website. Right here. Let's get to it. Savage Rights, statue of a semi-nude Washington, seated rigidly on a huge throne in the posture of Jupiter. He made this stone. He created this statue with the intent for it to be Jupiter and for it to represent Jupiter. That comes from the individual who created the statue. I ain't created the statue. This isn't my beliefs. I'm just trying to show you what's up. Now, it's getting kind of hot in here. I gotta loosen up my woo! Gotta get it ready. You guys might not be that hot at home because y'all aren't standing under a bunch of lights. I am. Let's keep going. Now, remember when I was talking about liberty and freedom and the God of War? Let's check this out. Here we go. Statue of Freedom. Armed freedom. Okay? Armed freedom. Freedom, triumphant, and war and peace. This is the Statue of Freedom. Now, it can also be called Columbia, which is why we have the District of Columbia, Columbia University. Down here in my home state, we got Columbia as our seat of government. Okay, because we know what's up. Now, Columbia, the goddess Columbia, comes from Libertas. Okay, the god of liberty, Libertas. Now, Libertas is also an ancient Roman goddess. Goddess of liberty. Okay? War and the slaves. Check this out. Because liberty is on the faces of their coin. It was on the faces of a lot of our coins until the 20th century. Now we have presidents. Okay? We have dead presidents. We have presidents, they call them the founding fathers, right? Founding fathers. So, liberty, libertas, coinage, money, usage. Also equated with slavery and freedom, known as the Liberty Cap.
Hey guys, if y'all really like the next video, we want you to leave a like, subscribe, click that bell to never miss the next video, and share the video because YouTube's algorithms want your only hope.